Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavai Tejasvinavaditamastu Mavivishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us, may he guide us and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Om, peace, peace, peace. And good evening. We're broadcasting tonight from the library of the Hollywood Vedanta Society because it's vigil. And once a month we do the vigil in the temple where people chant Jai Shri Ramakrishna in turns for either half-hour or hour segments. So we are still reading from the complete works of Swami Ramakrishnananda, often called the Apostle to the South, because he was sent to start the centers in the southern part of India. And Atma is our reader tonight, and he's going to begin in the middle of the section, one of the many sections actually, called Teachings of Sri Ramakrishna.
When iron is once converted into gold, with touching of the philosopher's stone, and afterwards you may place it anywhere you like, it will remain always gold. Similarly, when a fortunate man becomes pure, after coming in contact with the Sadguru, he may then live anywhere he likes and remain pure forever, without being soiled at all.
This is sort of in contrast to the idea that when the young tree sapling is small, you need to hedge it in, you need to put a fence around it, you need to protect it. But when it gets large, it no longer needs that protection. So similar idea here. Once you've realized the self within, then that purity remains. All right, let's go on.
Although an iron sword being converted into gold by the touch of the philosopher's stone, it does not change its form, yet it loses the power of inflicting any mortal wound like before. Similarly, when a great religious man becomes internally pure with the touch of the feet of the Almighty, although he does not change his form or shape, still he is never again led by any evil thought.
Yeah, so that's an interesting analogy there too. Of course, gold is a much softer metal. If it were actually pure gold, it would be a very soft sword and wouldn't be able to do much in the way of cutting. So that's where that analogy comes from. And so again, it's just reminding us that the person that realizes God doesn't physically change, but they may have a different aura about them. They may have a certain glow about them, but they still have a head with two eyes and a nose in the middle and a mouth underneath. It doesn't change in any way. That's the prarabdha karma keeps the body going until it's ready to drop off. All right, more about rocks and things here.
As a lodestone rock hidden under the ocean drowns down vessel by drawing from it all its iron nailings, so when the mercy of the Lord draws asunder and undoes all the worldly ties of a man, it then drowns him at once in the ocean of divine love, full of eternal bliss.
Oh, you did a good job of proofreading there on the fly. Mine says draws asunder arid instead of and. So congratulations. Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Imagine having a boat made with wood and nails and having all the nails fall out. The boat would, of course, fall to pieces. And so of course, we would like all of our worldly ties to fall away like that. And so the idea is that the divine love is such an attractive force that it will pull you away from the world, much like a huge magnet could pull all the iron nails out of a ship. All right.
When brinjals, potatoes, and others become boiled or siddha, they then become soft. Similarly, when man becomes siddha, or perfect, they then become soft in their nature. While like the unboiled or half-boiled vegetable, the imperfect men of the world are hard in their nature and merely increase the number of hypocrites and the wicked. Here's a pun upon the word siddha, which means both boiled and perfect.
Yeah, so of course we boil vegetables and they become soft. And so the idea is that, again, the spiritually advanced soul becomes soft, softer and softer as their nature. If they were unboiled or half-boiled, well, I guess if they were half-boiled, they'd be half-soft. Maybe have some soft spots that might fool some people. But the hard one is that they're, I guess the half-boiled ones would be the ones that would be the hypocrites. They could pretend to be boiled and have the soft spots, and yet they're hard underneath. So I guess that would be the analogy. There's a whole bunch of Sanskrit here, which we're going to skip over and assume that he's translating this for us in the next section.
There are 5 classes of perfect men according to their inspirations, as they get them either through dreams or by repeating certain symbolic words, or by mere accident, or through the grace of God, or by their own inherent perfection. These men are the ornaments of the Mother Earth. When in the state of dream a man hears some living words which enliven and illumine him, this makes him perfect. He is called a Swapnasiddha. But when by the repetition of certain holy symbolic words fallen from the lips of his spiritual guide, a man attains perfection. He is called a mantra siddha. As a pauper suddenly becomes rich by getting some hidden treasure, so when a wicked man suddenly becomes good and perfect, he is called hatha siddha. As when a wealthy man, taking pity upon a poor, helpless wretch, dispels his poverty and dejection by embracing him through his magnificence, similarly, when the merciful Lord, taking pity upon an immoral and wicked man with satanic principles, makes him one of his best devotees, then that all-honored man of God is known throughout the world as a Kripa siddha. As the pumpkin creeper brings forth the fruits first, and then the flowers, similarly, when a man is perfect, even from his birth, and when having no duty to perform, he works merely for the good of mankind by becoming an exemplary character, he is called a Nitya siddha.
Yeah, so all of these different ways of becoming a perfected soul. And of course we saw that in the life of both Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother, where certain people, well, the prime example of course is Girish Ghosh with Sri Ramakrishna, but there were some with Holy Mother too, where people that were dacoits, robbers, and they came to Holy Mother and their whole life was transformed. And there were more than one. So several examples like that. And of course, for most of us, we're on kind of the path of mantra siddha, where we're attempting to realize a spiritual goal by repeating the mantra over and over again. So these are the various ways one might expect to attain perfection. Of course, one would always like it the easiest way and just have it fall on you, but it doesn't always happen that way. Most of us have to work for it. All right, let's continue.
From a distance, the busy market appears to be full of noise and turmoils, but at a near view, everything there appears to be in perfect order, and bargaining and transactions seem to be carried on with nice precision. Similarly, shallow, superficial judgment cannot find any system in the infinite workings of the world, but when one dives deep into the mysteries, he finds there a well-ordered system moving on under the guidance of one infinitely intelligent power known as God.
Yeah, we often question the workings of the world. They often do seem rather chaotic. And I was reading some quotes recently about from the direct disciples, and they were stressing the idea that we have to accept the positions where we're in and try to be content with them and assume that everything is going along as God plans. Now, of course, unless you are a perfected soul, we still feel like we're making decisions. So you have to pray that you're making the right decisions. You can't just think that, well, everything's going along fine. Suppose you're a policeman and you see somebody smashing a window so they can grab a bunch of stuff in a store. Well, you can't just say, oh, well, I guess God's got a plan here. I guess I'll go eat dinner. You have a duty to perform. Or if you're a teacher in a classroom, you have to maintain order in the classroom so students can learn. So there's a little bit of a problem there for to assume that everything that's going on is according to the will of the Lord. You have to also assume that maybe He's put you in the position to do something about something that you're observing. But his analogy here is with the busy market and how it might seem chaotic and in a disarray, but if you really knew everything that was going on, you'd see that it was actually fairly organized and things were going along just the way they were supposed to be going on. People were buying and selling, and people were making a living, and people were getting goods that they needed to get at the store. And so amidst what looks like a chaotic environment, things are really just going along the way they're supposed to go on. All right, well, that ends that section of sayings about Sri Ramakrishna and teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. And the next one is writings on Ramakrishna Vivekananda.
I have this.
That's odd. Maybe.
Sure, it's
Why your books in different order? Are you sure that looks like the beginning of the book?
I just know this came afterwards.
We're having a few technical difficulties with our books here. Seems like a chaotic turmoil. There must be a purpose beyond it. Purpose is to give you all a break from
Yeah, we're in volume 1.
Yeah,
Right.
I know.
Okay. What part do we want of volume 1? I have part 1, 2, and 3.
We are now we should be in part 2.
Okay.
And why doesn't it say that? Oh, wait a minute. I take it back. This is just like footnotes, so it's not, I thought they were excerpts. That's just footnotes. Now, writings relating to God and divine incarnations, and you are, so your Kindle edition just left that section out because they were basically more like footnotes on sources. All right, so we're now back on track, and we're reading the Pastoral Sri Krishna. Kind of timely since we had Krishna Puja not too long ago.
Okay. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
The Pastoral Sri Krishna. Although joy always gives way to pain, and pain, in its turn, is followed by pleasure. Here, still, when a man is under the influence of one or the other, he is led away to believe that his days, prosperity and happiness, or of anguish and misery, will have no end. This is the reason why a man of the world is enabled to enjoy to his heart's content the little portion of pleasure which nature doles out to him with her miserly hand. In this sea of troubles, this is the reason why life has become so dear to him. This is the reason why the contact-born pleasures, although they are transient and ephemeral, like a mirage, and uncertain, therefore properly considered, should be unattractive, even repulsive. Still, they have so much charm for the whole human race, and this also is the reason why a man in anguish and agony becomes so restless and hopeless, deeming there will be no end of his misery. It's only given to a philosopher to meet calmly these two opposite powers which rule and guide the destiny of man. Now, the ordinary man wakes to see the real state of affairs only at the time of transition. That is, when his day of prosperity and bliss is giving way to the night of misery, and vice versa. Such a period of anxiety as to his future lot, the idea of the informality of the world brings in him a momentary desire to renounce it.
Have ephemeral.
Momentary.
Do you have ephemerality?
Yeah.
Okay, ephemerality of the world.
Of the world brings in him a monumental desire to renounce it momentarily, because this neutral period does not last long.
Yeah, so we tend to go through periods of joy and sorrow throughout life. They're the polar opposites of each other, and sometimes it's kind of law in between. We don't like that either. We tend to prefer joy, of course, but joy always seems to be followed by pain, and sometimes it's by contrast. Swami Swahananda was very fond of telling a joke. This man went to an astrologer, and he looked at his chart. He says, oh, you've got about 10 years of really bad luck. It's really going to be difficult. He says, and then what? Oh, you'll be used to it after that. So part of it is the frame of mind we come to things with. And if you can take the frame of mind that things are transient, and if joy comes, fine. If pain comes, fine. Have to learn from it. And try not to get into these periods of anxiety where you're worried about the future. You can almost certainly assume that it will still be filled with a mixture of joys and pains. Almost certainly. So don't have any anxiety about it. It's just the way it is. So whether we're looking at the political situation or the climactic situation or your financial situation or your family situation, all of these things have their ups and downs. So, Sri Krishna, of course, was a commensurate teacher and lived a long life through various episodes, of which there are many colorful stories. And so he is a wonderful avatar for people to worship, because they can find so many relationships that they can relate to. If you like his role as Arjuna's charioteer, his guide, and you want to think of God as your guide, there you go. If you want to think of God as your child, well, there's the baby Gopala and all those stories. If you want to think of Krishna as your lover, you got all those stories. So there are so many stories and episodes in Sri Krishna's life that all these different devotional attitudes that we can take towards a spiritual figure are very easy and natural with Sri Krishna. All right, we'll read the second paragraph. These are fairly long paragraphs.
A similar transition, sudden and unexpected, fell upon the lot of a newly married couple who were simple and beautiful, yet noble and majestic to look at, soft and delicate, yet determined and resolute. It came to them while they were being driven homeward in a royal carriage, richly decorated with all precious gems and ornaments, and followed by a large retinue of people wearing gaudy gala dresses and carrying or leading the marriage dowries in the shape of vast masses of gold and silver, pearls and diamonds, splendid chariots, gold caparisoned horses, and elephants. Devaki, the wife, and Vasudeva, the husband, formed this couple, the central figures in the procession. The charioteer was no less an attractive figure than these two, for not only was he the most gorgeously dressed of all in the company, but a golden diadem set with all sorts of precious stones adorning his head, as well as his commanding look, unmistakably pointed him out to be the ruler of the land. Although he was on the driver's seat, yes, he was no less than Krishna himself. Kamsa himself, sorry about that. The most absolute and tyrannical monarch of the period, the bare mention of whose name was sufficient to send a thrill through the hearts of all good and peace-loving people. The newly married girl, Devaki, was his own sister. He loved the sister with more than a brother's love. That is the reason why on that day, when he was sending her to her husband's house, he wanted to drive the carriage himself as a token of his fraternal love.
Well, of course, we're setting the scene here for going from extreme joy to extreme misery, because Kamsa is going to get a message that one of the offspring of Devaki is going to eventually kill him. It's very much like the Christian story of King Herod and Jesus. So we will continue with this fascinating little bit of the Krishna story.
Devaki and Vasudeva were really very happy, and they thought themselves very fortunate, having the dreaded monarch of the surrounding territories as their driver. The soft breeze accompanied with the fragrance of flowers was soothing them. Birds were singing merrily on the branches of the trees. The rising sun was sending forth his balmy rays, which served to thaw away gently the sloth which cold night had made to settle upon the joints and limbs of all living beings. Everything was pleasant all around.
Yeah, Ramakrishna is a good storyteller, by elaborating with all of these details that paint a picture of loveliness and joy and so forth. So that's the mark of a good storyteller. All right, so now suddenly the face of nature changed. Let's continue.
Oh, everything was pleasant all around. But suddenly the face of nature changed. The birds stopped singing. The sun was obscured by a cloud. The soft breeze became a gale, carrying dust and dirt along with it, and throwing them right upon the face of the procession. Rooks began to caw harshly, and similar other omens were wanting to augur an imminent danger. An unaccountable fear suddenly gloomed the minds of all in the procession, which just a few seconds before had been the merriest concourse of all light-hearted individuals. At such a time an unseen voice was heard from above, which was only intended for the royal driver, and which ran thus: "O thou foolish one, whom art thou driving so merrily? Wouldst thou not know that the 8th issue of her womb shall be the cause of thy death?" This is terrible. Kamsa sprang up from his seat, drew his sword, and was about to kill his sister on the spot, had not Vasudeva interposed. Falling upon his feet on behalf of his newly married wife, reminding him that not Devaki, but her 8th child would be the cause of his death. So he requested Kamsa, most humbly, to spare her life, she being fully innocent of the future regicide, and promised, since he had fear from her issues, that each and every one of them would be given over to him, and he might do whatever he liked with them. Well, Kamsa felt the force of the reason and agreed the proposal of Vasudeva. And accordingly, instead of killing her or giving her to her husband's house, he returned to his palace. The dejected and weeping couple, heading the mournful procession, gradually proceeded to Gokula, where Vasudeva had his house, and there they got down. And Vasudeva's friend, Nanda, the shepherd king, came to see him and his new bride in great joy. But when he saw them weeping and heard about the cause, his joy turned into sorrow. However, he began to console his friend by advising him to abide by the will of God. Vasudeva was wise, and so he took his friend's counsel and completely surrendered himself to divine dispensation.
I've never quite understood why Kamsa felt he had to kill all of those first children. If it was only going to be the 8th one, what does he have against the other 7? But he was simply a wicked person by nature, so I guess he was taking out his wrath on them. And somehow he thought he was going to get around this curse. There's so many legends about people trying to get out of some foretold doom, like escaping death, and they move to another city, and then death finally finds them anyway, that kind of thing. Several funny stories, if you think of them as funny, like that. And this is really kind of the same thing. Kamsa thinks he's going to outwit destiny, and it doesn't work out, of course. All right, let's read the next paragraph.
Besides his newly married bride, Devaki, Vasudeva had another good wife named Rohini. And with these 2 loving and dutiful wives, he somehow managed to live in as much peace and comfort of mind as he could command in such an unlucky and appalling circumstance. In course of time, the first male child was born to Devaki, and Vasudeva, true to his word, sent the news to Kamsa, and immediately was carried off by the servants of the demon to him, who instantly killed it with his own hand. 6 children were thus killed by the cruel king, who foolishly wanted to avert the course of fate. Now, in the case of the 7th child, somehow or other, the womb appeared to be fruitless, although it was really transferred through divine agency from Devaki to Rohini, who in due course of time brought forth a child that on account of its transference from one womb to another came to be known by the name of Shankar Shana.
All right, now they're going to lose count, aren't they? Sorry for the little chiming interruption. I didn't know that phone rang in here. Anyway, let's just continue.
Now, the love of a mother towards her child is natural and intense to a degree that makes her regard her own life as nothing when the life of her child is in danger. We can therefore slightly imagine the extreme torture and violent agony that Devaki had to undergo when each and every one of her 6 children were carried away and put to death before her very eyes, as it were, by her monstrous, demon-like, and tiger-hearted brother. Now, when the time for the birth of her 8th child was approaching, Kamsa ordered Vasudeva and Devaki to be cast into his prison, and accordingly both of them were thrown into the same dungeon, bound with the same chain. Now, both the wife and the husband, they did not know what to do. Every minute of their life, they called upon their only hope, their only deliverer, God, the solace of the unhappy. But God proved to be as heartless, inert, and silent to them as the stone walls of their dungeon. In the agony of desperation, they therefore naturally concluded that even the last hope of the miserable, which lay in asking for refuge at the lotus feet of the all-merciful Providence, had been denied to them, that the accumulated evil actions of their past lives had baffled even the all-powerful grace of God to send them only a ray of comfort, and that they would have to bear the burden of their unbearable lives even to the last. Oh, what were they to do? No solace knew that unhappy couple, whose hearts were as pure as snow, who even in that extreme state, that gloomy dungeon, the monster, never blamed God, nor disbelieved in him, but blamed the actions of their own past lives. Restless and hopeless were they indeed.
So whenever we find ourselves in difficulty, we can think of the difficulty of Devaki and Vasudeva and how difficult their life was. And yet, of course, it's going to have a more miraculous conclusion to this episode, because God doesn't turn his heart on them, and that's something we also need to learn, that we might feel like God is not answering our prayers, but perhaps we're just not patient enough. He's waiting for just the right time. So I'm not sure how much further we have to read to get to that part, but let's continue.
But however much the clouds may thicken and hide the sun from our view for days and days together, still none of them shall ever be able to take away the sun forever from us. Although in such gloomy days we may become very restless, fear another deluge, or imagine a dissolution of the entire creation. Even in the gloom of clouds there are flashes of lightning. And in the utter darkness of hopelessness, there are occasional glimmerings of hope, which keep the miserable man alive by making him hope against hope. And in this case, as the innate piety and devotion of the distressed couple never forsook them, they found a peculiar kind of rest in God seen in that restlessness of anguish. Ardent prayers proceeding from the very bottom of their souls incessantly flowed out of their hearts, and the Almighty Lord of the universe, in his own mysterious way, was in filling their souls with infinite power of endurance, which kept the fragile vessels of their delicate frames steady and safe in that gloomy and stormy sea of life.
Of course, this reminds us of other stories of people that have been imprisoned and yet have found inner peace somehow in their situation, or people that have had to hide during World War II and somehow managed to find some solace in their seclusion. Many times extreme difficulties create saintliness of sorts, that and so perhaps that's why we are sometimes challenged with a lot of difficulties in life in order to bring out saintliness. Let's face it, all good times, and it probably doesn't make for saints. It seems to be they're grown out of difficult times. All right, let's.
Even the all-enduring Mother Earth could not bear the tyranny, expression, and lawlessness of Kamsa, which her innocent children were sorely troubled with, and our Puranas go on to say that she actually wept before the Lord and made her complaints known before his divine majesty, in so telling and appealing a manner, the all-merciful Father of the universe thought it fit that he should not make any more delay in redressing the grievances of those who solely depended upon him for their support. He thought that the time was ripe when he should come down to take his birth in the womb of Devaki as her 8th child, who, has been foretold, was to kill the tyrant Kamsa and thus save the earth from all her troubles.
Now you wonder why they couldn't have done it with the first child and saved us about, 10 years here? Anyway, God didn't ask me, so he did it his way. And so we're now going to find out how he manages to save the day with a couple of miracles. All right?
Kamsa, too, was not careless in providing against the impending danger, which was to come about very soon, as the time of the birth of the 8th issue of Devaki was fast approaching. All the world was anxiously expecting the birth of the child, both the good as well as the wicked, the former wanting to relieve themselves from the tyranny of the latter wanting to relieve themselves from the fearful child by putting him to death, and thus making all end of him. The satanic Kamsa left no stone unturned to get the earliest notice of the birth of his dreaded enemy. Innumerable watchful and faithful servants were employed to keep strict watch upon the innocent and distressed couple all day and night. The time of her giving birth to the Savior of the earth was drawing near. Devaki, as also her consort Vasudeva, were sorely troubled in their hearts. Their natural affection for the child in the womb blinded them to the fact that instead of being destroyed, it was destined to destroy the tyrant and his party. Although occasional remembrances of the divine promise served to dispel much of their gloom and thus soothe and encourage them at times, still on the whole their lives were extremely miserable, especially as Kamsa was unrelentingly cruel and harsh to them at this time.
It reminds you of some episodes in like Harry Potter or The Lord of the Rings or something, where it seems totally impossible that the good people are going to win, and somehow something miraculous happens that they do. So we now are going to find out, I hope. We don't have to wait till next week to find this out, but we may. All right, let's continue.
The restlessness of Kamsa's mind also reached its acme, Every minute he was expecting the birth of the child. Sometimes, though fear, he would suspect his most faithful servants and imagine that they might take pity on the child and hide its birth from his knowledge. So he would himself come into the prison to see whether everything was all right. He would frown at and revile the terrified and shivering couple, and exhort his people to be more vigilant than ever, and promise a great reward to the man who would first show the child to him. We could not sleep in the night. The slightest noise would awake him, making him think that one of his servants was bringing the newborn baby to him. And we'd start up from his bed, run towards the door, or look through the windows towards the prison to see if there was any stir or commotion. We began to see visions of the child everywhere, coming with mace and discus to kill him. To divert his mind, he would look towards his favorite trees, laden with fruits or flowers, and out of them his dreaded enemy would step forth with mace and discus. Thence he would cast his eyes to the beautiful moon to find some comfort there. But the cruel moon, instead of giving him any solace, would open her heart to reveal to him the very same man with the mace and discus, and pained at the sight, he would turn his eyes to other objects of nature. Each and every one was conspiring against him, would bring forth nothing but that dreaded form. Then he would shut his eyes, thus wanting to free himself from the detestable sight. But out of that darkness would come rushing forth his enemy with the same weapons to kill him, and then he would not know whether to open or close his eyes. He was almost mad. Even his most favorite queens shuddered to approach him, as he used to be mad with rage, with no cause whatsoever. Oh, most deplorable indeed was his condition at this time. In his food, in his drink, he would see and shudder at the figure of his much-dreaded enemy, and extreme fear thus served to make his mind concentrated on the one object of his fear, which imperceptibly transformed his inner man into that object.
He was his own worst enemy. He was as much of in a prison of fear as Devaki and Vasudeva were, simply because of his constant fear of this child that was going to kill him. Interesting to see how the mind works, and how we create our own heavens and hells in our minds. Of course, he had reason to envision all these terrible things, because they were indeed going to happen. But of course, we probably won't get to the climax of this today. We've got a paragraph that goes on for pages here. So we can read the next short paragraph, and then we'll have to stay tuned till next week. All right.
On the other hand, the sorrowful and helpless couple lost all hope of saving their child from the hands of the watchful guards, who were every minute inquiring of the husband how it was faring with Devaki, who was then under labor. It was a rainy and stormy midnight. The wind was howling furiously, and incessant rollings of thunder and flashes of lightning made the hearts of the poor couple and the watchful guards shudder. For weeks together, these guards had not been allowed to enjoy good sleep, and under the influence of liquor, which they had freely used on that night to keep their spirits up, and the soothing effect of a cool and strong breeze, they all fell fast asleep, and forgetting their duty and their charge.
So you can see how the plot's going to unfold. Mother Nature is going to conspire to make these guards so exhausted that they fall asleep, allowing for this, the baby Krishna to escape. And we will have to leave those details for next week, because this next paragraph goes on for almost 3 pages. So
next week we're not here.
oh, that's right. Next week I have to be in Phoenix, so I won't be here. So you have to hold on for 2 whole weeks in utter suspense. Hopefully you won't be too distressed over this. I guess you probably know the outcome. Probably you all have read this before. But he's a very good storyteller. Yes, I've been asked to give some classes at the Phoenix ashram, so I will be gone next week. Thank you for reminding me. And so it will be 2 weeks. All right, well, let's close with a chant. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Om, peace, peace, peace. Welcome to Vedanta Mystery Theater.